Your body is stacked between mobile and stable joints. If we understand which ones are mobile and which ones are stable, it could also help identify why we're getting pain in certain parts of our body and also the areas that we want to look at if we do experience pain. So if we're going from the bottom or from the ground up approach to the body, we're going to kind of just give you the mobile and stable joints. The foot in general, it's a mobile, or excuse me, the foot is a stable joint, right? We're standing on it all the time. It's very stable. When we get to the ankle, it's mobile. So we can move that ankle in all different range of motions. So Nadine can show dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, inversion, eversion. We can do circles. So we know it's a mobile joint. Good. When we get to that knee, we're looking at that stability of the joint. All we have is flexion, extension, and we have slight rotation in and out with the foot planted slight. Good. Then what we do is we go up to the hip. We're looking at a mobile joint, right? So we have abduction, adduction. We've got flexion, extension. And we also have rotation. Internal, external rotation of the leg, bringing that foot, rotating the entire leg in and out. So we have tons of different directions of that hip, so that is going to be a mobile joint. We're going to move up to the lumbar spine. Everyone knows this should be stable. We get to thoracic, right in the middle of the back. We're looking at mobile. We get to cervical spine. We're looking at stable. We get to the shoulders. We're looking at mobile, and the shoulder is the most mobile joint in the body. We go back to the elbow, we're looking at stable, and then we get to the wrist, and we're looking at mobile, all right? So when we look at the approach of the entire body, of it being stacked, we can learn a lot about that. If a mobile joint is not mobile, it is going to steal from a stable joint. But the pain is probably going to be in the stable joint. So if I have knee pain, we always want to look up and down of what that joint is. So I'll be looking at the ankle and the hip for mobility. So I will test the ankle and the hip for mobility, or Nadine will, and we'll see whether we have good range of motion with that. Not only range of motion, but strength, stability, and balance within that joint too. Because if one of those things is missing, if your stability is missing in that joint, it's going to rob function from it as well too. If we don't have balance in that joint, it's going to rob that function. A lot of times we have enough strength, we just don't have enough stability or balance on that joint to correct the patterns that we're in. So if we have an issue with our hip or our ankle, it might be shown in the knee. A big one we usually see is, I'm going to have you just rotate sideways. So we usually get pain, right? A lot of people deal with this single-sided pain into the lower back and the lumbar. Sometimes it's both sides. Usually it's like one side, and we have the pain here. So we're always looking at the back. We're always looking at that lumbar. But if we go back to remembering that the lumbar is a stable joint, what's the closest joint to that stable joint? It's going to be this hip right here. All right? So we lose a lot of function in this hip. And you can face forward, thank you. We lose a lot of function of that hip when we're sitting down and sitting in a chair and typing away, or just standing up and going to the stairs, to sitting on the couch, to laying in a bed, and not creating all the different range of motions that you saw Nadine do with that hip. If you're not doing all those range of motions on a daily basis, or at least 3 times a week, we can see a lot of the issues start arising in that lower back. Now, if you go to a normal doctor, they're going to say it's the back. You go to the back doctor, they're going to say it's the hip. The hip doctor is going to tell it's the back, and then you're going back to the general doctor, and no one really knows what the heck's going on because they all specialize in one thing. So if we look at the body as a whole being stacked by stable and mobile joints, we could start trying to correct a little bit of that movement within that joint. So if she was dealing with a single-sided lower back issue, we would be focusing on one, creating that range of motion within the hip, but most importantly, we'd be looking at the opposite side too. For the body works in a push and pull, right? So the body, for every muscle that's pushing, we're going to have a muscle that's pulling. That's why Nadine's standing here and not just entirely collapsing over, her body turning to a pile of jelly, is because the body's in a constant push or pull. When we have one side of the body that's creating more push than pull, or more pull than push, after extended period of time, sometimes even years, we start having that thing kind of just poke at her, and then she's going to be like, oh, I kind of feel this feel this tension in here, I'm feeling pain, we push through it, and sooner or later we're like, oh wow, this pain is really bothering my low back. It must have been the deadlifts I just did yesterday, when in reality it could have been your lack of movement, range of motion in the hip, especially in the front side of the hip, which we're going to touch base on in another video. A front side of the hip that can be causing a lot of that lower back pain. So if we find out how to open up the front side of the hip, build some strength and movement into the back side, and get that body going again by reviving the muscles, moving the muscles, and then rebuilding them, we can now create that function and actually know a way to fix some of the pain that's in our body. And we can take that little simple exercise that we have with the hip, and we can start applying it to the elbow. When people have a lot of golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, a lot of that is due to stuff that's going on in the wrist and to the shoulder. So we identify and try and work with those issues to relieve that. Now, that's not a tell-all be-all. Sometimes it is just the elbow, sometimes it is just the knee, but I would say for the majority of issues, we always want to be looking at the lack of movement in the mobile joint for the pain that's caused in the stable joint, because usually that's where you get pain, is in that stable joint. One of the big differences actually is in the shoulder, where we do a lot of times get a lot of pain right in this front side of the joint where the bicep tendon slides through the AC joint up here. A lot of the times that is due to actually a lot of the stuff that's happening in the back, but it's not necessarily the front side of the shoulder. It could be the back side of the shoulder that's causing issues, but we'll dive into that in another video. Either way, if you got any questions, let us know. Just remember, the body is stacked and stable and mobile, starting from the foot stable, ankle mobile, knee stable, hip mobile. Our lumbar is stable, thoracic mobile, cervical stable, shoulder mobile, elbow stable, wrist mobile. Keep that in mind. If you have any questions, come check us out. We'll help you out.